Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are going to get into one of the most critical pieces of pretty much any modern web app.
So, what are we getting into? Well, we're diving deep into React authentication. We're going to kick things off with a simple idea, the digital bouncer. Then we'll look at the core patterns you need to actually build it. After that, we'll talk about the really important stuff, like securing a user's session, adding some more advanced access controls, and we'll finish up by tackling that age-old question: should you build this yourself or buy a solution?
Okay, so let's kick things off with a really simple, but honestly a pretty powerful analogy to get our heads around what we're even talking about here.
I love this quote. It just perfectly nails the core job of authentication, right? It's all about controlling access. Think about it. Just like a nightclub, you don't want just anyone wandering into your app's VIP section. You need that digital bouncer at the door, checking IDs.
And in the world of React, that bouncer, well, we call that a protected route. That's the technical term. It's basically a gatekeeper component that makes sure only people who've proven who they are can get to the sensitive stuff. Like a user dashboard, a settings page, all that private data. All right, so how do we actually build this digital bouncer in React? Well, it turns out there's a core pattern that pretty much every developer relies on, and you know what? It's surprisingly straightforward.
So the whole thing really just relies on two key pieces working together. You've got a shared guest list, and then you have the bouncer itself. I mean, it makes sense, right? The bouncer needs a totally reliable list to know who's allowed in, and that list has to be available instantly, no delays. And it really breaks down into this simple two-step process. First up, you have the guest list. In React, we usually build this with the Context API, which creates this global state that's available everywhere in your app. It holds all the user's info. Then, step 2, you build the bouncer, the protected purchase component. And all it does is check that guest list. If you're not on it, boom, you're redirected to the login page. It's simple, it's elegant, and it's super effective. And really, that's the whole magic trick. You just wrap any sensitive page or component in your app with this protected page, and bam, it's now in the VIP section. You've basically just thrown a digital velvet rope around your app's exclusive areas, and only people on that guest list can get past it. Okay, so the user's in. They're past the bouncer. But now, where do you keep their pass? That little token that proves who they are has to be stored somewhere in the browser. Otherwise, they'd have to log in again every single time they refresh the page. And this leads to a really critical security decision.
So where do you keep the keys to the club? There are really two main answers here. And believe me, the choice you make has huge implications for how vulnerable your app is going to be to certain types of attacks.
So your two main options are the browser's local storage or using cookies. And the key difference? It all comes down to security. Local storage is super easy to use. It's convenient, but it's also completely exposed to any JavaScript running on your page. And yeah, that includes malicious scripts. Cookies, on the other hand, can be configured to be way more secure. So this table here really lays out the critical trade-off. With local storage, you're super vulnerable to an attack called cross-site scripting, or XSS. What that means is if a malicious script somehow gets onto your page, it can just read your user's token, and game over. There's not much you can do. Now, cookies can solve this. You can set a special flag called HTTP only, which makes the cookie totally invisible to JavaScript. Awesome, right? But this opens you up to a different kind of attack called cross-site request forgery, or CSRF. So the modern best practice is really a multi-layered defense. You use HTTP-only cookies, you add another flag called SameSite, and you use a separate CSRF token. I know, it sounds like a lot, but it's the right way to properly secure your session.
Okay, so getting past the main bouncer is one thing. But what if your VIP area has, well, different sections inside it? Maybe one area for regular members and a special behind-the-scenes area for administrators.
This, my friends, is called authorization, and it's the key difference between authentication and authorization. See, authentication is just about confirming who you are. Yep, you're on the guest list. But authorization is about determining what you're allowed to do, which specific section of the club you can get into.
And what's cool is we can actually extend that same protected protocol component we already talked about to handle this. It's a pretty neat trick. You just add a role property to the user's data in your auth context. Something simple like admin or viewer. And now your bouncer component does a second check. It's not just, are you on the list? It's, okay, you're on the list, but are you on the admin list? And if the answer is nope, sorry, you're not getting in. All right, so now that you get the mechanics, there's one last really big picture question that pretty much every single development team faces when they start a new project. And that is, do you build all this yourself or do you buy it?
You've really got two main paths you can go down here. The first is to self-host using a great open source library like Auth.js. This gives you total, complete control. It is your code, it is your data. But that also means you're the one responsible for all the security, all the maintenance. The other path is to use a hosted service, something like Clerk. Now this is the fast lane. You get pre-built UIs, they manage all the complicated security stuff for you, but what's the trade-off? Well, you're building on their platform, and that means you have less control and you risk what's called vendor lock-in down the road.
And that really brings us to the final question, which neatly summarizes the whole thing. How much control over your app's front door do you really need? There's no single right answer here, you know? It totally depends on your project, your team, your timeline. So, do you want to be the architect of your own custom nightclub, controlling every little detail? Or would you rather just hire a professional security firm to handle the front door for you? The choice, ultimately, is yours.